homeschooling isn't always picture perfect. Welcome to Homeschooling with Dr. B, where we'll help you find solutions to the challenges you face and celebrate your successes with you. Now, please welcome your host, Dr. B.
Welcome, my tenacious homeschool tribe. Today, we're going to be talking about standards. And of course, this brings to mind my mother. My mother kept me from attending my school of choice, Humboldt University. It really had my heart set on it, but she discussed it with my dad and she convinced him to keep me home. So he lied to me and he told me that it was impossible for me to go. I had to stay local so that I could continue to live at home. And sometimes when my children tell me where they want to go to school, like recently my daughter went from East Coast schools to, hey, Mom, guess what? I really want to go to UCLA on the West Coast. Of course, I think of things like if something goes wrong, I won't be able to get back to her as fast as I normally would. And what if she needs me? What if she gets in trouble? I start thinking of all of these things. But then I catch myself and I think of what my mother did to me. And the reality is that I want my kids to have more choices. Even when it comes to homeschooling, I want my kids to have choices. Now, very early on, I thought that saying that they could have choices meant, well, as long as they went to a tier 1 university, one of the top universities in the country, or they went to an Ivy League. I mean, these universities are well known for world-class research, academic excellence, an exceptional student body, the highest level of innovation, creativity, and scholarship. So who wouldn't want their kids to go there, right? Of course, now I realize that my homeschoolers have a choice that goes beyond a specific school. Their choice is based on their interests, their ability, to some degree, geographic location, and cost. All of those things have to factor in. I mean, when my daughters just said, Mom, last night I had a nightmare. And I asked her, what was that nightmare? You didn't let me go to School of Japan. School in Japan, huh? Oh boy. Okay. And I said, of course I would let you go. But inside I was thinking, I don't know about this. Okay, what could you possibly learn in Japan that you couldn't learn in the United States? Have to process this one. But regardless of where we stand on those things, one of the things that I did early on was I developed a set of standards so that my kids would have the skills to go to their school of choice. Now, when it comes to the whole school system, we're constantly hearing about standards, and frankly, a lot of the times it seems like a bunch of hooey. I can't believe I just said that as a retired college professor, but it does. It seems like people spend a lot of time developing these standards, most of which are not practical, are not targeted to the specific demographics of the students of that school. So, are standards good or bad, especially since they don't seem to be very helpful or to be accomplishing the things that the school system tells us they want to accomplish? So should we have them in our homeschooling processes? Well, let's begin by defining what standards are. Educational standards are defined as the knowledge and skills students should possess at critical points in their educational trajectory. Nationally, these standards are set by the National Research Council, and they are supposed to serve as the basis of educational reform and policy across the nation. It's supposed to help determine how we're going to measure the success of students and how we're going to be teaching those students. But of course, we know from countless news, books, researchers, speakers, those standards are often not met successfully. So, what should educational standards be for homeschool students? Well, some parents would debate whether or not there should be any standards. And there is no question that some states or districts set some legal mandates for homeschoolers. But I'm not talking about those standards. Now, if you're in a state where you are mandated to meet certain standards, I feel for you. You will have to deal with that. But really, what I am talking about is the standards that you set for your homeschoolers as a homeschooling family. Now, I do believe that homeschooling families should set educational standards for themselves. Why do I believe that? Well, because standards help us set a goal, and having a standard means we can determine if our child has made the adequate progress for their age group. The standards are there to inform you, as your child's teachers, how your child is doing. That's it. I know we can complicate this more. I choose not to. And I advise you not to complicate your life more either. Standards also help us create our roadmap to attain the goal. And let's face it, like in the case of my kids, they have this university goal all the way up here, but we just started the 9th grade. So I look at the standards as a road or potential road on a map to reach that goal. Doesn't mean that we can't change the road, but I always do want to make sure that we're moving toward our goal, not away. So setting those standards for me really helps me create short-term goals, long-term goals, and of course, not forget about the ultimate goal for our family. So the standards really help inform my instruction. I choose to develop curriculum based on our family standards, or use curriculum that meets those standards. And I teach in a way that our children can learn the material so they can reach those standards. And if it doesn't work for whatever reason, I chuck it and I teach in a different way. Always keeping in mind that I'm trying to meet this short-term goal and this long-term goal. My standards do allow me to develop testing and assignments that assure that my kids are accountable for the learning process. That's very important. I don't take ownership of it. When I was teaching in a co-op, one of the things that I found to be very challenging was that many of the parents give ownership of the learning process to whoever is teaching. And this happens even in the co-op homeschooling setting. Really, the learning process should always belong to our children. They have to have ownership of that in order to be accountable, in order to develop confidence, and in order for them to be successful. Those standards also allow me to ask myself constantly, what is the most effective way to both teach and assess my homeschoolers' performance to make sure that they're mastering the level of rigor necessary to meet those standards? In other words, what do they need to be successful meeting their goals? Standards also help us measure achievement. And those standards for me go beyond the academic to the emotional and the social. Recently, my ADHD child was struggling. And the first thing my husband said to me was, can't you adjust the assignments or the schedule to keep her working? I could have, to be honest with you. I really could have. I chose not to, because I felt that to continue to push things forward would have been detrimental to her emotionally and socially. It didn't meet my family's standards of growth. So I had to take a pause, help her go through this moment or this challenge, and then refocus back on the academic component. I truly count this as one of the greatest benefits of being a homeschooling family. Now, I can't stress this enough. When it comes to standards, don't allow others to determine your homeschooling standards. Yes, always make sure that you're meeting your state's legal requirements. It is very important to meet those standards. But beyond that, remember, don't compare your standards to those of the school system or to those other homeschooling families. Standards should be tailored specifically to your family and to your children. Don't focus on creating standards just specifically to meet your kids' academic goals. Trust me, there are days when my child says, I want to go to Harvard. They have an excellent musical theater program and excellent political science program, and this is where I want to go. And it would be easy to get carried away and just drive consistently towards that goal. But again, part of my homeschooling standards are emotional and social. I think it's great that people get into Harvard. It would be really nice if my child got into Harvard. But the bottom line is, I want her to be a whole person, a well-rounded person, not live specifically for one target in her life. Let's face it, what we have is now. We don't know what's going to happen in the future, and it is important to live our lives well. At least for our family, it is. So don't get carried away by your kids' goals. Don't set standards for the sake of setting standards. Just because you heard this podcast or you read a blog that said standards are important and necessary, don't think you need to take a week or a month or a day to just sit down, figure this out, write it aloud. Especially if your kids are young, you have plenty of time to think about these things. And standards can develop over time. They can also become more complex over time. Remember what I said earlier? Rome was not built in a day. Take the time you need, the time your family needs, to create your own homeschooling standards and then move towards them. Now, I'm blessed with very smart kids. And for the most part, they're pretty hardworking. They are not perfect kids. And as we get into these teen years, they can definitely have moments in which they are total pains in my butt. But academically, they have been able to meet and supersede my standards. When they were recently tested, it was suggested that they could go straight into college. Now, they were in the middle of the 8th grade, and my homeschooling standards said, bully to that. That's not going to happen. Now, they might be academically ready, but they are not emotionally or socially ready, and I want them to enjoy this stage in their life, just as I have wanted them to enjoy the previous stages. I don't see a need to rush. I just don't see it. We will continue to work on honing their already excellent academic skills to give them opportunities to mature both emotionally and socially, to make mistakes, which are so healthy in such a strong component of the learning process. And I want them to make those mistakes, not just academically, but emotionally and socially. We're entering the teen years. They are going to start dating, driving. Oh, this is scary for me. Fortunately, they're going to start on golf carts. And in the meantime, as we hone our academic skills, we will develop and mature in our emotional and social skills and continue to acquire more knowledge and experience, always moving toward our long-term goal of, I believe right now, one wants to go to UCLA or NYU, and other one is looking at the University of Central Florida or University of California in Irvine. Who knows? We're still early in this game. We'll see where they ultimately decide to attend college. Or one of them is considering not attending college. We'll see. The important thing is she will have the skills to attend when and if she chooses to do so. I'd like to end the episode by thanking HydroFeed, who sponsored this podcast. Remember, this is the insole that massages your feet with every step. Use the code OMB15OFF for an additional 15% off at hydrofeed.com. Don't forget they have 3 different styles for adults. There are ones that I don't have. They have a pair specifically for women's heels and pumps, and of course for the kiddos. When you make your purchase, you can get a second pair free if you pay for shipping and handling, and that second pair can definitely be a different size or style. Don't forget that just because life can be overwhelming, homeschooling does not have to be. Check out our homeschool support group on Facebook by searching for Homeschooling with Dr. B or by going directly to our website. For additional links and resources, check out our website. Till next week, enjoy your kiddos.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Homeschooling with Dr. B. Head over to homeschoolingwithdrb.com for more information and resources. That's homeschoolingwithdrb.com. Until next time.